immediately, like in a few minutes. You can say something in Kenya right now, and in a few minutes, everyone around the world knows what you have said. So social media has added another angle to misinformation, disinformation, to conflict, to hate speech, and that's what we're going to explore today. So we're going to look at how social media either fuels conflict or sort of how it propagates conflict, and then we're going to see what we can do about it. I had Vida mention, as you know, we are all digital, what has he called us? So as digital citizens, what can we do? How can we mitigate this conflict that is being propagated online? So we're going to look at that. And also, as a side, we're going to look at how art can help in this. So as we're looking at how social media, how we can use social media, because anything that can be used for bad can also be used for good. So we can use social media to counter all these messages that we're seeing online about hate, on conflict, hate speech. So we're going to look at how we are going to use social media as a tool to mitigate this conflict. So as Kendi mentioned, we're going to borrow very heavily from the social media mitigation hate speech field guide that Defy Hate Now has come up with. And so as the social media field guide architect, I think she would be better placed to explain to us the whole resource package about what it contains and what you can expect from it and where exactly you can get it. So Kendi, welcome.
Thank you again. So the field guide, it's sort of like, so we've just dubbed it or named it the field guide, but it's sort of like an instruction book where when Defy Hate Now does trainings, technically, wherever, there's always a tendency of, like we have a lot of content, but then most of the time we will walk away with our content. When we walk away with our content, a lot of people are like, if I want to do a training similar to what you've done, or even similar to what we're doing right now, where would I get information to guide me, or what would I use to guide a conversation? Because like Njoki said, this is not a training per se, it's just we're having a conversation, and please engage us. I know most of you are muted, and probably we should have let you guys introduce yourselves to us. But in the interest of time, if you want to, know what is contained in the field guide, I'll share a link. It's on the website, on the Defy Hate Now website. It's several. When I finish explaining this, I'll just drop a link on this conversation, and probably also in the group for the WhatsApp group, which I'm assuming everyone is in there now. So the field guide resource kit, it comes in a pack, like it comes in sort of like a small pouch like this, the one I'm holding right now. And this pouch has an A4 guide. An A4 guide is, you see the book, the one that has the spiral roads. It's the one that has it's the A4 guide, and that A4 guide has in it mini chapters. The one Njoki is holding up, yes. It has the one for South Sudan had, I think, 6 chapters. We did one for Cameroon with 8 chapters. Now we've gone back to about, I think, 6 chapters. We keep refreshing, like as long as we have the project ongoing, or as long as we have trainings that we're doing, there's a possibility of getting new content, because social media changes really, really quickly. There are things that maintain, there are things that don't change, but then generally, like for example, TikTok just came when 2-3 years ago, and there's so many things that people are doing on TikTok that you wouldn't have imagined a while ago would be possible. So it has 8 chapters, and 6 chapters currently. And these 6 chapters range from social media and conflict, social media use and fact-checking, peace building through art and technology, like the way Njoki is saying, we're going to use today. There's also an aspect of identity. Identity is who are you? Who are you as a person? Like, for example, yes, my name is Kendi Gikunda, but I was born and named this way, but then I found myself here. So in the way that I found myself here, there's things, aspects of me that make up myself, like my family, my religion, my marital status, my education, where I'm from, the country I am from, where I live currently, so many things that make up who you are, which sometimes you need to, accept or unlearn or relearn or just forget about. There's so many things that make up who you are, and those things should also identify like how you're going to then react to things in the world. Then there's a chapter on mental health, trauma and healing. Of course, because DeFi Hit now works a lot in conflict areas, there's a difference between mental health in normal situations, which everybody, I think, has gone through, a bout of you're feeling a bit low, you're feeling a bit depressed. That's also part of mental health. And we have a lot of sort of stereotypes attached to mental health, especially in Africa, or I'd say correctly in Kenya, at least where I'm from. Then we normally go through our common hate speech expressions. So in this case, you'll see Cameroon, but we've done South Sudan, which Njoki is going to do in one session. And then there's a facilitator's notes, which is I think 3 or 4 pages that's going to guide you on how can you do a training? How can you organize a training? What do you need to organize a training? And, it's also going to help you create a presentation like this. There's a guide on how to do those things. Then there's 5 discussion cards, which are quite small, which Njoki is holding them up right now. You can choose to use one to have a discussion with, because they have different topics. There's one for spotting misinformation and disinformation. There's one for mental health and trauma. There's one on identity, just as the chapters in the field guide. That's the MO we go with. We use the chapters in the field guide to then create those discussion cards, such that if you have no time to create an entire guide, an entire presentation, then you can just use that one card to just have a discussion with your peers, the people in your church, the people in your community, or even an organized training. We also have A2 posters, which are quite large. You can hang up. So that is one of them. Njoki is holding it up. It has that one specifically has various hashtags, popular hashtags by us at the time when we created the field guide. So we also have one on things to do for peace building in your specific communities. And then we also have one on, in this particular module, we have one on what is mental health and trauma, and there's many ones on that. There's also another one on misinformation. There's several you can explore. I'll share the link, you can download and see them. And then there's an A2 poster. There's a snakes and ladders game, which is larger now. It's, I think, an A1 poster. Yes, it's an A1 poster. It's quite large. On the one side, it's a summary of what is in the field guide, what you use in the field guide, the topics in the field guide, which again, you can hang up on a wall and have a discussion through that. On the other side is a snakes and ladders game. If you remember going to, when you're going to high school or primary school, mostly I think South Sudan and Kenya sort of shares that part. At the back of your book, there was snakes and ladders game where you just play. If you swallowed, you go back. If you find a ladder, you go up. If you just fun ways. But then the thing is about this particular game is when you land in a particular spot, then you have a bubble that is teaching you something about maybe misinformation or spreading hate or just anything about the current situation on social media. I don't like saying social media. I prefer saying online because there's more, like, for example, Google is not social media per se, but it has a lot of misinformation, for example. And then it comes with a pen, which is not compulsory. You can buy your own pen and sticky notes, whereby you can pass them around to share notes and discussions. And then it has a USB key. USB key has all these things. It's called what? A flash disk, yes. It has all the things that are in the field guide. The one Njoki is holding up. Everything that's in the field guide is in the USB key and more. And the unfortunate thing is, the USB key you can only get if you get given a copy of the field guide, which there are very few. So if you download the field guide from online, you're not going to get the USB key. But I would say generally, from how I have found the usage of the field guide, not a lot of people actually use the USB key. A lot of times people forget about the USB key and, move on with their lives and create their own material. And then also this field guide, like, for example, you don't, when you have it, say physical or a soft copy, I keep saying I'm going to share a link. I'll share as soon as I stop speaking. It's very easy to create your own new narrative, sort of like if you find that this doesn't work for your particular environment, how can you modify it so to make sure it fits into your needs or it fits into the things that you want to do during your training. So basically that's what is in the field guide, which is we will explore a bit about it, and I'm gonna let Njoki do that as the co-trainer for this. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kendi. That was well received. So our discussion today, as we have said, is going to be very heavily focused on what we have inside the field guide. That is going to be our guide for the discussion. And so our discussion, like I said today, is going to concentrate on social media and conflict. And later on, we're going to talk about how we build peace through art and technology. Of course, social media is part of technology, and a lot of what we see on social media also can be said as art, because people write a lot of essays, they come up with videos, they come up with photos, and even memes nowadays are put in the same category as art. So when you're looking at peace building through art and technology, it's nothing big. You don't have to be like a well-known artist to do this. Our motto for everything is just starting small. Even when we're talking about what you can do to counter hate speech, we're talking about it from where you are, like where can you start? So let's start with what is hate speech. But before we start with hate speech, when just talking about social media and conflict, we find that social media, the spread of either hate messages or whatever kind of messages, whether positive, whether negative in social media, it's just, it spreads news very, very fast. You look at all the platforms, all the social media, even online, not just social media, of course, because people are there socially, they exchange views, also online places like Google and on websites and everything. But most of those things are usually given more of a platform by social media. And the funny thing about, not actually funny thing, but the interesting thing about social media is we have put this so-called influential people, influencers they're called on social media. We have these influencers that when people say something, we tend to believe it. It is said that when people trust the messenger, they will trust the message. So there are several social media influencers, whether it be political leaders, whether it be religious leaders, whether it be diaspora online communities, whether it be people with a large following. There's a way somebody can just share something, whether it is wrong, whether it is hateful, whether it is positive, whether it is good, and the reach, the number of people that they can reach while doing that one thing, just one post, small post, maybe on Twitter, 140 characters. But the impact on that one thing will be, because you will see it, you will share it, another person will share it, another person will share it. So social media is not just limited to a primary audience, because back in the day, maybe when you're watching TV, you watch the news and you hear what the newscaster says, and maybe you can discuss it with the people you are there in the room with, or when you go to work the next day, you can discuss it with people, but the reach is not that big. But now you can see something on social media, you can screenshot it, you can share it, somebody else can share it with another 1,000 people, 3 of those 1,000 people will take and share it with another 10,000. And so we find that on the scale, when it comes to scale of sharing news, social media is a bit special. So we are going to have to look at different ways from what we are used to on combating hate on social media. So coming to hate speech, I would just like to, Kendi and I have been talking, and it might appear that we are the only people here. So I would like to hear from anyone who has any sort of experience with hate speech, or can just explain to us, sorry, I put on that slide, can explain to us like what hate speech is and what hate speech means to them, how they describe it. Any volunteers? Because I have names here and I'm going to start naming names. Please, I want volunteers. Let's just make this into a discussion. Tell me what hate speech means to you. Because I find the people define hate speech in very different ways. And even when it comes to enacting laws on hate speech, the very definition of hate speech sort of brings a problem, because a lot of people cannot agree on what is hate speech, what is free speech, what is restriction of speech. So to you personally, my dear participants, what does hate speech mean to you? Yes, Ading Deng.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I think this is a great discussions, and of course, personally, hate speech is when you offend someone, for example, writing or act of maybe giving out information about someone which is a false information, whether in written or unwritten, to create an environment, uncomparable environment toward other person. For example, if I said X, maybe like a person saying with this is doing this, and that's not true. I tell friends or I tell someone I know, and then it's unwill of the person, and then that means I'm defaming the person. And of course, that can be a hate speech. It cannot only be a social media, because hate speech, even when you're talking to somebody, I said a comparable statement to someone in any form, that is what I know can be hate speech.
So what you're talking about is more of defamation. Like you talk about something, you falsely put accusations on someone. Maybe someone did something or said something, but they did not do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, defamation. Thank you, Deng. Deng Bol. Deng Bol, I see your hand up.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Yes. Let me try to define hate speech.
Okay.
Hate speech refers to any form of communication that is intended to vilify, degrade, or incite hatred or prejudice against any individual or group of people based on their race, nationality, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or any other personal characteristics. Hate speech can take any forms, including verbal, written, or visual expression through public speeches, social media, news article, or any other form of communication. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But I want you to tell me what you personally think hate speech is. Like, give me an example of what
personally, I have a disability, and in the last few years, and I think many years now, since I became disabled around 1996, I have always been in public space and doing a lot of political things. And most of the time when I compete with people, when they have nothing else to say, they just refer to my disability, you see. And it was even something that became a point of discussion recently online when I formed a political party, and someone was like, what is someone with a disability in a wheelchair going to do in a country that has defeated people with legs and all that? So I kind of responded and I said, perhaps the problems of South Sudan do not require big stomachs and long legs, maybe brains. So that's how I rebutted back. And although the person was really condemned, I see this as a lot of people who are hateful and always resort to hate speeches are people who feel that they have nothing else to say, and especially when they find that they have been defeated or have ran out of ideas. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Then that is very true, and I'm actually really sorry that you had to go through that. Attacking, getting to a point where somebody is being attacked for who they are, like physically, that forms a very big part of hate speech. That is exactly what you're talking about when you talk about hate speech. So when you form a political party, they don't come at you for your policies. They don't come and say, so when you form this political party, you stand on this policy, on this issue or this issue. They just go and attack you. They attack your physical person, your appearance, who you are. So yeah, that forms a very, very major part of hate speech. Thank you very much. Naomi, hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you doing?
I'm okay, and you?
I'm very, very, very fine. So tell us, what do you think hate speech is?
Yeah, according to my understanding, actually, hate speech is an abusive or threatening. It can actually be in form of speech or in form of written or unwritten prejudice against another opposite sex or anybody. So, for example, let me give you an example. According to me, let me say that people came to interview me. Actually, they need to get information from me. And when those journalists came, they came actually to interview me, and I gave them information, and they took some of my pics, and I was putting on maybe a short skirt actually, but they took my pics and then they went and posted it. Instead of putting the information they took from me, they started posting about me because I was putting a short skirt and ruining my reputation. So that's also an example of a hate speech, because actually this kind of wrong journalists, actually there are ethics of journalists, but they don't follow. So they end up making some hate speech against people, forgetting the humanity and other things. So this is according to me.
Thank you, Naomi. I agree. And again, I'm also really sorry that has happened. So hate speech, it true.
Has not happened actually. Sorry. It was just an example to my understanding.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So hate speech can be conveyed through images, through videos. It does not have to be written down. It doesn't have to be speech that somebody either said or somebody wrote. So it can also be conveyed through images, like the example that Naomi has given. So if somebody puts forth a photo, comes and publishes a photo just for people to say hateful things about, they're not putting it there for a positive purpose, they're putting it there for a negative purpose, so that people can come and start to pile on and start to say negative things. So that is also part of it. Thank you very much. So to close it out, Rogers Ramadan, so we can move on. Rogers.
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi. Good afternoon to you. So tell us about what you think hate speech is.
For me, the way I think about hate speech, it's a matter of someone sharing negative thoughts or feelings about someone or group of people sharing public, so that these people as well can start hating and attacking these people, and the person will end up being bullied by a group of people and being hated a lot. Yeah, thank you. That's what I needed to say in brief.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I will agree with what was said. Dangerous hate speech. Sorry, it's a communication that attacks. Kendi, excuse me, Kendi. Hello, Kendi.
Yes.
Could you kindly, if you may, take over for a few minutes? Let me just.
Okay.
Gosh, my background has a lot of noise. Let me take care of that.
Okay. Sorry for that. So according to the description that Njoki was giving, and she's the one sharing the screen, I hope she comes back quicker. Hate speech is all communication that attacks people and describes them as less valuable or less deserving of full participation in society. Like the example that, oh my God, I've forgotten your name, that I think, is it Deng? Yes, Deng, you've given about people attacking you as a person because of your disability. It's also, it varies, by the way. It could be written, it could be verbal, it could be even in form of songs. I do believe you guys have heard of a song that has been written in sort of a hate speech manner, in a way that it targets like a specific group of people, attacking them in a bad way. So that's also part of hate speech. And the unfortunate thing about hate speech, I think it tends to it spreads faster than any other communication. Like, for example, before, there's this saying that, I don't know, it's in my mother tongue. So I don't know if I translate it, it's going to sound nice. But in English, it goes, I think it's also there. The truth, it takes a while for the truth to catch up with a lie. Like, it's very hard to counter hate speech, because one of the things that most of the time that happens is you need to know, people need to be aware, people need to be educated to understand the magnitude of hate speech and how bad it is in a society. Njoki should, okay, she's back.
Yes, I am. I'm really, really sorry about that. There was a bit of confusion in my background, so, but I am back.
So you can take over to the next slide. I was just explaining the different forms of hate speech. Okay. And sorry guys for that confusion.
Sorry for that. Okay. So I know we've discussed so much about hate speech, but there's a way now hate speech, we usually say hate speech does not always just remain speech, or when it's online, it does not just remain online. It bleeds onto the physical world, if we can call it. And that happens when hate speech turns to dangerous speech. And hate speech turns to dangerous speech when it is combined with a call to action. So a hate speech can just be something like, you say, oh, this group of people are like this. But when you make it a call to action and you say, this group of people are like this, and they need to be removed from our particular society. You see, now that is a call to action. You tell people, you need to do this. So when you see this particular group of people, do this. When you see this particular group of people, that is what turns to dangerous speech. So dangerous speech is any communication that calls for people to take part in violence against another group of people. And what makes speech dangerous speech? So how can we identify? Because hate speech in itself is bad, and it can cause a lot of emotional damage, a lot of emotional trauma. People have been known to completely leave social media and get out of any online platform. And it has had very many repercussions. But when it comes from just that online, and it moves offline to to dangerous speech, which can actually cause harm physically to people, then it becomes quite dangerous. So how do we identify dangerous speech? So when you look at the message, there are several things that make that message dangerous. And the first thing is the speaker. We have to look at who is saying those things. And most of the time, the people who have the power to rile up people is somebody with a bit of influence. And in terms of influence, we can look at it and say, is this speaker, the person who is saying this particular speech, is he or she influential, and why? Most of the time in the African setting, it's either a political leader or a religious leader. And these are people who have a very large following. They have people who follow them. The people who hang on to their every word, the people who are either elected by a large number of people, or in instances where it's like a religious leader, people have very, very huge respect for religious leaders. And whatever it is that they say, it looks like they're backed by some superior power. So people take whatever it is that these people say to heart. So if that person comes, like, for example, in the US, when the former president, Donald Trump, talked about an insurrection, and then people stormed the Capitol building. So that is dangerous. Depending on who is saying it, then the speech can just turn from being, like, for example, in Africa, we have a lot of hate speech around tribes. So if I, as a person from tribe A, say something derogatory about somebody from tribe B, it is hate speech, and it is online hate speech, and it can cause a lot of bad blood. But it's not the same as when maybe a politician who is a minister says the same thing about people from the other tribe. So people take it with a bit more weight. So the first thing you do when you're identifying dangerous speech is look at the speaker. And then you look at the audience. Who is this audience? Who are they talking to? We have this thing of being very tribal, not even just in tribes as we're talking about Africans, but a tribe is anyone, people who have sort of the same interests as you, or come from the same geographical location, or share the same gender. So you'll find online, if you're a woman, you belong to very many female-led spaces, a lot of spaces that are full of women. If you're a man, the same thing. If you're interested in say, motor car racing, you can find your tribe there, or just the normal tribes we have culturally. So when you look at the audience, you see, who is this person talking to? Because his audience can either receive it or reject it. Like, for example, you can come and talk about, like the example Naomi gave about the lady having her photos taken wearing a short skirt. If you come and put it in a space where there are a lot of sort of women with a more progressive mindset, it's not really going to be dangerous. It's going to fall flat on its face, because they're going to sit there and wonder, so what you're showing us a photo of a lady in a short dress, what do you want us to do? So it will not be dangerous. But if you go take it to a more conservative crowd who believe that that should not be happening, then that becomes dangerous, because it might rile them to start meting out violence on women they see on the street who are dressed like that. So you also look at the medium, what they used. Did they use a particular, because now we're talking about online platforms. there are some news you can see either on a national platform. Yeah. So you can have like maybe your national TV or national radio that has a lot of viewers, a lot of followers, and people really believe in it. People take whatever news they post, you know, as truth. So if you post on such a medium versus somebody just coming to post on a group about people who cook, you see there's a difference in how those two will be taken. So one is a mostly political group, the other one is a mostly leisure and hobby group. So the medium that you use is also very important. So like we said, when you're trying to identify dangerous speech, you look at the kind of message, the kind of speaker. Is the speaker influential? The audience that they're talking to, the medium that they're using. And something also very important is the context. And in the context here, we're talking about either historical factors. You know, it can be that these two groups of people, whether it's tribe A, tribe B, or men and women, or religious people and people in power, or students and teachers, depending. So it can be, there are some historical factors that have happened between those two tribes that make it very volatile. You know, so if you have maybe one group of Subaru drivers versus a group of Toyota drivers, there's really no historical context to it. So in as much as somebody can say something about the other group, might not be as hard as maybe somebody saying something between a Christian saying something about Muslims, because there has been, you know, there's a historical factor to this, or about, you know, tribes in Kenya, maybe a Kikuyu saying something about somebody from the Luo tribe. So historical factors and also social factors that surround that time, at that particular time, what is happening. Like for example, now there seems to be a very big, what some people call a gender war. Yeah. So if somebody is saying something about women and who is a man, there's already sort of a social construct around it. So it's just going to go into the conversation that is already happening, which is going to fuel it even more. So other than the context and everything, the one thing that was not included here, and we need to include it, is the language that is used. So there's a difference between, say, maybe I come say something in English, or I come say something in my mother tongue. That's a difference, because now at this point I'm only targeting the people who are speaking this language, and I'm trying to put a very just specific message across to them. So it can be either that or some words. There are some words, and we're going to cover this in our later session about lexicon of hate speech. There are some words that are used to describe people that are very, I don't know how to put it, very derogatory. And they can only be understood in a context of if you're there. So if somebody from outside comes and hears that word, it was not going to mean anything to them. But for you people, since you have a historical background, you have some historical factors of how this name came up. Like you can be calling somebody from this tribe, these people are nicknamed a certain name. What other example can I use? Even just gender, you know, women are called this, a lot of women online, as we see, they use all sort of slang meaning prostitutes. You call somebody, for example, like somebody with a disability, you know, they're called this way, they're called that way. So those words, those derogatory terms can really change a message. So when you're looking at dangerous speech, and somebody has used those terms that are considered to be very derogatory, then that can turn hate speech into dangerous speech very fast. So before we move on, is there any question I can answer about how to identify dangerous speech or how to look at hate speech versus dangerous speech. Okay, we will take silence to mean we're all okay with that. So it is easiest to identify dangerous speech that comes just before violence. That before violence is about to break out, it tends to be very clear, and it often calls for and directly endorses violence, which is true. So in the build-up, when hate speech starts to turn into dangerous speech, they might start with hiding it a bit. You know, it can come with maybe using some sort of proverb or something. They're talking about, they're referring to this group, but they're not referring to them directly. But then the closer it comes to violence, then they have now the confidence to come all out and be very clear and call for violence, directly endorse violence against these people. And sometimes they can even put it like, it's called accusation in a mirror. They tell you, you have to get these people before they get us. They're actually coming for us. So they call for violence on that, it's a basis for them, but I like to think of it as just an excuse. So years or months earlier, the dangerous speech, yes, is often expressed in much less clear language. So both its meaning and its impact. So it's usually small steps. They just want to see the reaction. So when they put small step, when you see dangerous speech online and you think to yourself, maybe this is not that bad. Maybe we should not counter this. It's okay. It's not that bad. It's just usually a first step towards something, which is why we should never ignore the hate speech that we see. So when you see and you think, they're not really calling for violence, they're just saying this. In fact, they're just equating it maybe to something else that has happened, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad at that moment. You do not know, maybe in the next week, in the next month, in the next year, then they're going to become bolder and bolder because they face no opposition. They say this, nobody opposed. And then they're going to climb a step higher and say this, maybe nobody opposes, then they say the next thing. So it's very important for us to call out hate speech when we see it, at the point where we see it, so that it does not go further. So calls to violence are not as obvious, and they're most likely to come from high-profile speakers, as we had explained earlier. So how can we counter this high-profile speakers? And with the high-profile speakers, I have given a few examples, but let me hear from you. What would you say in your context, in the context of where you are online and who is likely to bring up dangerous speech? Who would you say? What examples? Like I had given the examples of politicians or diaspora communities. Who else do you think we can classify as a high-profile speaker? My peoples. Anyone? Okay.
We can talk about some social media pages and some blogs.
Oh yeah, bloggers, social media pages and bloggers who have, they usually have a bit of a higher subscriber count, and people sort of rely on them for news. So when you hear something has happened, people are waiting to see what this blogger is going to say about it, or how they're going to cover the story, or maybe sometimes that they want to break out these stories. So people are always on their pages to see what they can find out about current events. So thank you, Samuel. That's right. So bloggers, we have online diaspora communities, we have politicians, heads of political parties, religious leaders, online activists, and sometimes even not just bloggers, but people who have a following for a completely different reason. A comedian, an actor, a musician, a footballer. It can really be anyone, as long as that person is high profile enough, has visibility. You know, when they say something, it is going to be seen by a lot of people, and people are going to share it, and people are going to react to it. Yeah. So how can we counter these high profile speakers? Number one is we can put pressure on them to retract the statements. So like I said, when you see it, when it's just being said, and sometimes people can come and say, oh, you know, I was just joking. I was saying it in jest. I was not serious. And at that point is where pressure needs to be put on these high profile speakers to retract their statements. Because if we let it go further and further and they gain more confidence and more confidence, so by the time they're coming to call for all out violence, it might be very hard to get them to retract their statements because they have been given the confidence by the fact that nobody is opposing them. So if we put, you apply enough pressure, and we have some very good examples of this. Sometime last year, I think it was, so the Ugandan president, President Museveni, his son, said some things on Twitter about his son's name is General Muhoozi. He's a general in the army. And he said something about how it would only take him and his army 2 weeks to capture Nairobi. Now that's a very inflammatory statement. And it's said by somebody who's very high up in the army, and also directly related to the president of a country. And as far as high profile speakers, I don't know how much higher than that it gets. And in as much as some people were taking it, you know, as a joke, you know, this person, he's just saying, those kind of things can never be allowed to just stay. So there was a lot of pressure that was mounted by Kenyans, and President Museveni himself had to come and retract those statements and say, oh, you know, apologize and say, oh, this is not happening. We are sorry, we have no idea why he said this, and this is not something that is in the plans or anything. But that brought about a bit of cohesion between Kenyans and Ugandans, because they had started going at it online on each other. Now, taking from what General Muhoozi had said, now Kenyans are starting to attack Ugandans online, Ugandans are retaliating to Kenyans. And so it was a sort of a high tension situation. So putting pressure on these high profile speakers to retract their statements makes it harder for somebody to go like to the next step to say something that is even more inflammatory, because they're like, if I got opposition on only this first step, what about the other step? I don't know, do you guys have any examples of any high profile speaker who has been pressured to retract something they said either online, or they just said it maybe in a rally, or it was reported in the papers or on TV or radio? Do you have any examples of that?
I got to say the Arab world is always contain, they speak or they always do speak or hatred words, hate speech. Mostly to like, okay, for example, I'm not meaning the religious, but sometimes religions sometimes offer these hatred. Like the Muslims, the Muslim will create the hatred against Christians. But in case people are not thinking of that, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. In terms of religions, yes, it does happen a lot. Anybody else with another example? So there's this example. Yes, Dengbo. I see your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to add that I think about a few days ago, John Lemon, who is one of the anchors on CNN, made some some remarks about referring to Nikki Haley, who had just declared being a presidential candidate recently, and what Don Lemon actually said that, well, Nikki is not in her prime. So this actually caused a lot of problems, and he left immediately after that. And I understand that he is being disciplined by the company, by CNN, to the point I understand that although you will return to work, you will have to go through some sensitivity training because of that comment that he had made, because you could not explain why Haley is not in her prime. In her prime, because of the age, and what is this age determining? Whether age to run for president or childbearing age, or what exactly was it? Or was it just because she was a woman? Thank you.
Thank you, that's true. And the pressure that people put on such statements for CNN, I think they just see a lot of this, because we also had some few years ago, CNN come up with, when the former President Obama was visiting Kenya, and then they called Kenya a hotbed of terror. And, you know, there was a lot of to do online, and they had to retract that statement and offer an apology. And the ambassador, the US ambassador, had to come and, you know, apologize. So putting pressure on these high profile speakers actually works. So as you see, he made that statement, very inflammatory, very uncalled for, actually. And the kind of pressure that people piled on it, so his company is disciplining him, and for him to return to work, he has to go through training so that he does not say anything like that again online. Thank you very much, then. Wilson Kenny.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I want to give an example such as these musicians, American musicians called Kanye West also.
Kanye West, yes.
Controversial comments on the anti-Semitic.
Yes.
That one also could be a typical example of.
Yes, but that one, the difference is that the pressure mostly did not come from the people. The pressure came from the highly placed people who felt offended, but it is still pressure. But, you know, it is pressure from the people who actually had the power to do something about it. But even us, as members of the audience, we still have the power to put pressure on such people to retract statements. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Henry. Hi, Joseph. Sorry, we can't hear you. Joseph, there seems to be a problem with your connection. Okay, we will get back to you a bit later. And can you hear us? Can you hear me? Okay, we will get back to Joseph a bit later. So, like we said, countering high-profile speakers, we can ask them to, we can pressure people to retract their statements, or ask other high-profile persons to make statements on hate speech. So that means if this person who is very high-profile says something hateful, then we can ask somebody else who is just as highly placed to come and counter that message and either say something against what they were saying, or just in general condemn hate speech. So whenever you see somebody say something, you'll always see somebody on their page tagging somebody else, please come and address this, please come and address this. So we might not have, personally as me, as Njoki, I might not have the reach that is needed to counter that message, but we know somebody else who does have that particular kind of reach. So we can reach out to those people and tell them to compel them to release a statement on condemning hate speech or condemning what this other person has said. Still, the example I used with President Museveni, same thing, in as much as it was not him who said it, he was called upon as the president to come and, retract the statement and sort of make a statement saying this is not happening and counter what had been said. And you see that had a very, very big effect. And the third point is government agencies to ensure high-profile individuals do not use hate speech words or inciting statements. So this is where a lot of hate speech laws and policies come into place, which a lot of countries are trying to enact, but they're facing quite the opposition because a lot of people say that policing speech in itself is wrong and all speech is free speech. I say, if I say something and you're offended, see, that's your problem, but I have the freedom of speech because I think the majority of constitutions around the world protect free speech. So it's usually a big problem when governments are trying to police speech because even on the government side, for them, they also might have their own ulterior motives of trying to silence people. So if you talk something against the government, which might actually be true, if you say maybe something the government is doing, the government will use these hate speech laws to have you arrested and say, oh, you are in breach of these hate speech laws, and then put you in prison. We've seen a lot of that in Ethiopia at the moment, arresting a lot of journalists have found themselves, even in South Sudan, I'm sure, a lot of journalists find themselves contravening, so to speak, hate speech laws. So they're arbitrarily arrested and charged using those same laws that are supposed to protect people against hate speech laws. However, there are instances in which these policies are used to make sure high-profile individuals do not use hate speech words. It worked very well in Kenya, by the way, not this last election, but the one in 2017. Some very high-profile politicians and musicians were arrested because they were inciting people against, inciting one community against the other community. So in the case of the musicians, they were coming up, they were writing songs that had, hidden meanings inside those meanings, like trying to pit one community against the other. Same with the politicians. So the arrests actually saw politicians sort of try to think about what they're saying before they say it, because now they know if they just come out, because there's a whole lexicon, there's a whole list of words. If you say the following words, then you will be in breach and you will be arrested. And most of them are usually words that are derogatory towards another tribe, but it's still something that is a work in progress to get to a point where governments can come up with laws that they themselves will not abuse to just put people who are trying to keep them in check, to put them in prison. It's still a fight, but the government can actually make a very, they can really help in terms of those high profile individuals to make sure they do not use hate speech words that can rile up the audience. So when you're looking at targets, hate speech online is not discriminatory. That means anyone can be the target of hate speech. But there are groups that are more the targets of hate speech than others. In the African setup, tribal groups, that is usually number one, especially around, I don't know about other countries' specific timelines, but in our country around election time, it's always something to do with tribe. When it comes to hate speech, the most hate speech is recorded from one tribe to another tribe. The second category is women. And the funny thing with this women being targeted is that even in places where people are slinging back insults about tribe, whenever a woman speaks and people want to attack her, even now the tribe becomes secondary. They first attack her on being a woman. And the people who have seen this the most are female politicians. So whenever they say something, they will come and say something. If it's a man who said something, people will come and attack them on their performance, on their policies, on their tribe. But then when a woman comes and says something, all of a sudden, just like Mr. Leon said on CNN, it will be about your face, it will be about your weight, it will be about your age, it will be about, are you married or not? So women find themselves as targets of online hate speech a lot more, I think, than in any other group. Because even if somebody is, if you take maybe politicians who face a lot of insults online, when you look at male politicians versus female politicians, the female politicians will face way more hate. When you look at any public figure, musicians, bloggers, when you look at influencers, any type. And it's not just insults. It's usually defamation. They're defamed, they're usually called a lot of names. A lot of people like likening them to prostitutes. There's also the issue of threatened sexual violence. They usually have a lot, people online, they see a woman, they threaten sexual violence on her, they threaten to leak their naked images, they threaten to leak images of them doing something else. So in terms of online violence, we should really call out these things when we see them. So there's a lot of misogyny online, just as there's a lot of hate that is put in towards religious groups, tribal groups, the LGBTQ plus community, for example. So when you look at these groups that are targeted mostly for hate speech, when we come to the point of countering hate speech, we're going to look at how we can offer support to the people who are mostly targeted by hate speech online. Okay, so these are questions I thought I'd ask you. Have you or someone you know being attacked online because of your ethnicity or tribe? And do you think women in positions of power are more likely than their male counterparts to be attacked online? If so, why? So I just want at this point to have experiences. Just let me know your experiences online. Have you ever been attacked online because either of the tribe that you come from, or the gender that you are, or what you do? Whatever it is, have you ever faced online attacks by people? Is there anybody with that kind of an experience? Or somebody you know, doesn't have to be you, can be somebody you know as well. Anyone? Yes, Lobur.
Attacking online is always to happen. It has happened to me sometimes back.
Okay.
It's like one thing is like when you write a graded message, you find that a great scammers will attack you on your sites.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is during my time,
mm-hmm.
I got that someone attacks me, says, all right, you man, I think one thing I need from you, I have to find you up. So I was so scared because what have I done? So this is what means a hate speech. Someone air you something bad, which means you have to take care of yourself. So that was it. So this is how the attackers come on. Thanks a lot. Is that right? Yeah.
You had an actual threat against you?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Anybody else, other experiences? Okay, I'm going to take silence to mean we have read about this kind of things, but we don't have that much personal experiences. So before we go to peace building through art and technology, I would like to talk about the issue of misinformation. We have talked a lot about hate speech, but then also hate speech can actually come about because somebody said something that was very wrong about either a situation or about a particular group of people. They can come and say, you see, this particular group of people, they did this, and that it is misinformation or comes from a complete misunderstanding of what has happened. And so the hate speech that comes from a situation that did not even happen. So whenever we talk about hate speech, we also should look at the kind of misinformation that is going on online. And I know you're being trained as fact checkers and how to check online if information is accurate, if it's recent, if the information is complete, like do you have the whole entire picture, or are you just listening to a very small snippet of what happened? Has the message just been very carefully cut to where it would make people angry, but then when you listen to the whole message, that's not what they meant, taking messages out of context, sorry. So when we're coming to how we are going to be able to counter hate speech online, we've talked about how to counter high profile speakers, but also when you come across hate speech online, just on your own, you're reading maybe a blog, you're in the comment section, and people are talking about things that may not be true. Maybe you checked it out and you say, so it was not true, or they're just slinging accusations. So what can you do in that case? And the first thing you can do, is just pause. When somebody comes and throw names, they throw names at you, they call you this, they start referring to you in derogatory terms. There's always that thing where we also want to start slinging insults right back. So the first thing you can do is just pause. And this happens either before you comment back or before you even just share the information that you saw. We have a whole entire campaign called Think Before You Click. So before you either click share or you click post or you click comment, just take a minute and just pause and think about it. And refrain from making either hateful comments or from reposting and sharing misinformation, facts that might not be true. So every time you come across this, just take a moment to yourself, just pause and try to read it, because a lot of the time when we read some things, we are very overcome with emotion, and the first thing we have to say is, oh, he called me a dirty this, so I'm going to just come right back and sling back the insults. What we are seeking to do is to educate, is to go out there and tell people, these things happen, misinformation is very rife, and some people just come online to spew hate speech. So we want to be the voice of reason. The first thing you do is you pause. Second thing is you fact check, which I know you're being trained to do. You verify any information that you come across, and to react. So silence sometimes will make, we have already discussed this, when you see something and you're silent, that gives people the confidence to go on and say something even more hateful. So as much as possible, when you see something that you put as hateful speech or as hate speech or is moving towards dangerous speech, just make sure you react. Speak up very calmly but very firmly, and if possible with facts that you have actually gathered from your fact-checking mission. And then at the same point as you are reacting, you're also challenging whatever it is they're saying. So whatever they're saying, if it's misinformation, then you challenge it, and you already have your facts. So you can just challenge in a very respectful manner. And support. So when you come across victims of hate speech online, offer your support and offer it publicly. Because if people see somebody is being attacked, there are some people who can just stay away because they think if they support this person, they'll also be attacked the same as them. So just offer a bit of support to the person who is who is a target of the hate speech, and then educate. Take a chance, if you can, to educate people about misinformation and hate speech, and also whenever you see it, if you can, report it. So when you go on our social media and also on our website, we usually have the guidelines of how to report on every social media platform. The social media platforms come out with how you can report any instances of hate speech, of misinformation, of fake news. So you can just go through and look at it and see how you can report in any case of misinformation or hate speech, because we cannot allow this to continue. So before we move to peace building through art and technology, we'll take any questions on social media and conflicts. Okay, I will assume that we are all okay and move on. So we're looking at how we can use either our art skills or our tech skills to spread peace. And like I said, you do not have to be an artist for this to happen. You can start very small. Draw a picture that depicts, peace, that brings happiness. Come up with these memes we see online that just promote cohesion, social cohesion, online cohesion, and helps towards building peace. So whatever it is art you're doing, just start small. You can just write something down, a few lines that are geared towards bringing people together. That is also art, and it will help in the process of peace building. So I need you to tell me in South Sudan what good examples you have of art that has brought people together. And this can be anything from concerts that promote peace, to art shows, to tournaments. It's not just restricted to how you as a person are using art. So is there a good example of, art bringing people together? I'm going to give you an example in Kenya of communities that usually have, they sort of come together and bring a festival. And these are communities who, in their history, has always been, they are at war with each other. Yeah, cattle rustling and ambushes, and going into the village and getting somebody's cattle and stealing even property, sometimes taking the women. But then you have these festivals that have been created to just bring them together. And they have teams that, participate in things like, racing donkeys. So you come, this community has made their food, you come taste their food. This other community has done the same. They've come with their cultural dances. So that sort of exchange of culture and art has really brought these communities together. So is there any example of something like that, or just any other form of art that has any sort of peace building characteristics in South Sudan? Yes, Dengbo.
Yes, in South Sudan right now, there are many examples to give.
Okay.
And despite all the challenges, because of the state of politics in South Sudan, especially the way social fabrics have been torn by all these tribal and political and armed conflict. we've seen that basketball and football have united people so much, and especially the young people, and especially with the national basketball team, the one that is led by the former NBA star Luol Deng, who have been winning many games. This has.
I take that personally, but okay.
Yeah, and yes.
I'm saying, as a Kenyan, I take that personally.
Oh, yes, I understand. Yes, we're going to make it to the finals very soon. That's for sure. So basically, this has brought the youth together, and the youth in South Sudan are the orchestrators of the violence, and this has actually helped a lot, because these are the people who are uniting or rallying behind this game now, and they are beginning to feel that sense of pride or belonging to South Sudan as a nation. That is one. Another thing that seemed to be uniting the communities that comes from 3 regions, from Bahr Ghazal, from Upper Nile, and also Equatoria, is wrestling match, the traditional wrestling. These are matches that are usually attended by thousands and thousands of people, sometimes more than a presidential address. So these are very huge gathering that a lot of peace messages are usually passed, and most of these games they usually end peacefully most of the times, and this is because they are always held in the spirit of peace. Another thing is the issue. Lastly, the cultural dances. People seem to appreciate cultures a lot. One of the things that happened in South Sudan is that we did not develop our cultures. If we had, we would have had appreciation for them. And right now, if you see the Acholi of South Sudan dancing, or the Nuer people, or the North people, of South Sudan dancing, there is no way you will just pass and not sit and attend and just watch. These communities have always fascinated the South Sudanese people in terms of their cultural presentation. And these are things that I think if the South Sudanese people, and especially the government, if the government invests heavily in this, this is another way also of uniting the people of South Sudan through these arts. Thank you.
That's very true. And there's something quite important you mentioned about targeting the people who mostly are used to instigate violence. Because this young, and mostly it's young men, it's not like they're the ones who are bringing the violence. They are used as a tool to bring violence. And so if you target them specifically and use art to take their minds from, being used by politicians, being given a bit of money to come and instigate violence, and put that energy into putting them in things like basketball and football and anything cultural and with art, I think that would go a very long way in promoting peace building. Thank you very much, Deng. Amer Ruben. Amer, hi.
Hello, hi.
Hi, how you doing? Oh, it's nice to hear you speak. This name we have not had any other lady.
I think I'm going to agree with Deng with everything he has said. Apparently, I'm seeing the festivals. People are doing the festival. You can hear the Fajulu festival. Other communities are doing the festivals, and there is a lot of mindset that we have about other communities. But once you attend the festival, you really learn a lot what those people are doing, and then there's a lot of mind change. So I think it's one of them. Apart from the 3 that Deng has mentioned, is one of them that is really, uniting people and learning from each other, complete what this community stands for. That's what I thought, yeah.
I fully agree. We had another hand up, but somebody disappeared. Yes, Wani Amos. Amos?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I can support what this lady have just said, because mostly, you know, in Africa, we love music.
Yes,
and music is an international language where everywhere you go, even if you don't understand, but when the music is good, definitely you will have to stop and have a moment. And of late in South Sudan, wherever it is, people are having concerts and they're bringing different artists from somewhere to come and perform, and definitely it brings people from different cultures, different age group, they all come together. So what I can say is music is one thing that also brings people together. Thank you.
Okay, so music, culture, sports, festival, I fully agree. So art has a way of, it just breaks barriers. Somebody has said you don't even have to understand the language. You don't have to understand the language for you to appreciate good art, in terms of a nice painting, in terms of good music, in terms of dancing. It's just something that can bring people who don't even speak the same language together. And if I start to appreciate things about you culturally, then I'll start to look at you as human. Because sometimes when it comes to the hate that is being peddled, you find a lot of people dehumanize people from the other group. And you're told, you know, a lot of bad things about them. You start to see these people as almost subhuman. And then you go and look at them, they dance just as you do, they cook good food as you do, they listen to music as you do, and you just start connecting with people on a level. So art is something that has a very, very big stake in peace building. So we can use art, and it doesn't even have to be that big in terms of festivals. Even by ourselves, we can use art, we can start some very small steps. Even just when you see somebody from another tribe or another region, another race, even just going to introduce yourself and ask some bit, just learn about their culture. A few days ago, it was International Mother Tongue Day. You know, take a chance like that to just learn several words from another person's culture, or maybe sing a song from their culture, because these things are the kind of things that just bring us all together as humans. And, you know, you stop seeing somebody else as just the negative things that have been said about them, but then start seeing the correlation between us as humans. We just all enjoy the same things. Yeah. So these are an example of things we can do to promote peace building. Attend and cheer each other's sporting events. We've already talked about that. Sports being a very, very, very something that brings people together. And in as much as it can have like different teams, these people, they're brought together by the love of whatever game they're watching. And they can have like friendly banter, but still they are passionate about the same thing. So you can attend and cheer each other's events. You can join in with other people's dancing. We've already talked about that in terms of the festivals, in terms of cultural events. Show interest in other people's traditions instead of always thinking, oh my God, these people believe that. How can they believe this? How can I believe that? Show a bit of interest in other people's tradition and want to know why do they believe that. Instead of saying, I can't believe you'd believe something like that, just ask them. Why do you believe this? And the stories can be quite interesting of why they came to such beliefs. Listen to each other's stories and histories. Same thing, just take an interest in somebody who is. We are so used, especially online, to be in echo chambers. So me as a woman from this particular tribe, and I do this particular job, I only join groups that, you know, are of my particular tribesmen, and I only join groups that only have people who think a certain way that I do. So it can be nice to venture out and listen to other people's stories and histories. And it makes, like I keep insisting, it makes them human. So even if somebody comes and tells you something bad generally about this group of people, you can say, no, but you see, my friend is from this tribe, and this and this, and this is what he or she has done, this and this has happened to them, this is their history as a family or as a community. And so you're less susceptible to misinformation and to being misguided by fake news and just by fake rhetoric. You can taste each other's food because, you know, we also consider cooking an art. Share and play each other's music, and tolerate and appreciate linguistic diversity. Like I said, just learn several words in somebody's language. They say when you speak somebody's language, you speak directly to their heart. So if you come and speak to me in a language that I was born into, and that's the language of my traditional language, then I'm willing to listen to you more than, you know, as we are speaking in a language we both understand that is not my particular language. So just appreciate people's language. There are, especially in terms of migrants, in some countries, Europe, the US, where when they hear somebody speak a language that is not their own, like for example, maybe in the US, somebody is speaking, there's a Kenyan who was actually attacked in a restaurant for speaking Swahili. Just for, they're speaking with their family. They're in a restaurant, they're seated with their family, they're just, you know, conversing amongst themselves. And the lady was so offended and kind of said, oh, this is the US, you need to speak English, and just took a bottle and, you know, hit her on the head. So we should tolerate and appreciate our linguistic diversity. We should know that there are very many languages on earth, and just try and learn a few words. And if you come across somebody from that tribe and you speak to them, just greetings in their language, that would go a long way towards social cohesion being built. So I had talked about this, Think Before You Click. It's a campaign that Defy Hate Now carries out. It's an awareness campaign that just tells you how dangerous misinformation and fake news and hate speech is. And we stress the importance of just thinking before you click, asking yourself, is this information that I'm about to share, is it accurate? Is it relevant? Is it recent? Because, you know, you can be sharing something and saying, oh, this is what people are doing, and that is information from 20 years ago, something that already passed, but you're sharing it as if it's happening now. So is it accurate? Is it relevant? Is it actually true? And is it also helpful? Because some information we share is not really helpful to anyone. Like, for example, you come across a photo of somebody who's being discussed because of their weight or because of how they look. So if you share that, how is it helpful to anyone? So you're just sharing it so that people can laugh, or people can, just derogatory things can be said about that person. So if it is not helpful, so always just think before you click and just put it out there. Share the gospel of thinking before you click on your own social media when you meet people. Because people share, people just come across something. And the thing you need to understand about social media is that our attention spans are very short. From Twitter, for the longest time, having just 140 characters, to now introducing short form video content like TikTok, because none of us can sit down and watch a video for like a whole minute. So you grab people's attention span in like the first 3 seconds. So a lot of people just sort of read the headline, but don't even read whatever it is contained in the article or in the video to get the context. So before you click, you need to understand that there's some people who don't even read beyond the headline. So if you just come and say, for example, let me see, because you know bad news travels way faster than good news on the internet. So if you came and wrote something like, 2 friends went to the market, nobody is going to click on that. But if you wrote that 2 friends went to the market and then one found their husband in a compromising situation and then started fighting, a lot of people are going to click on that. So the people who write those things, they know, so they just put a headline that is very inflammatory, but the article inside has really nothing to do with the kind of headline they put. So before you click, before you share, before you comment on something, just take a moment and think. We already talked about the steps that you can take before when you see any sort of post or video or a comment or something that you think can be misinformation or can be fake news or can be hate speech. So just use those steps and think before you click. You can also go on our social media and just type the hashtag think before you click, and you can see the entire campaigns that we have run on that. It's full of very, very good information. And we also celebrate the International Day for Countering Hate Speech, where we say no to hate and no to hate speech. And this is usually on the 16th of June. So this year, of course, we'll still celebrate it on the 16th of June. You can also check, keep checking on our social media.
18th of June. Candy? 18th of June, not 16th.
Oh, 18th. Oh, sorry, 18th of June. Sorry, it's on the 18th of June. Yeah. So this is our sort of poster for the Think Before You Click campaign. And these are the kind of things you can do before you click. The first thing, like I asked, is your communication respectful of others? You need to be very respectful. Issue of hurling insults online. And you know, a lot of people do that. And the kind of things most people say online are not the things they can tell you face to face. If you met this person face to face, they will not say those kind of things. But because being online provides some sort of anonymity, I can sit behind my screen, nobody will see me. I'm not talking to anybody directly. But even the anonymity that social media provides you should not make you not be respectful of others. So always make sure your communication is respectful and you think about how your posts look to others. Now, before you share, like the example I gave of if you're trying to share a photo of somebody who's being maybe ridiculed for their weight, ask yourself what is the intention of you sharing, or what is the intention of you commenting on somebody's post? What is the intention of you liking a post? What intentions do you have? Or even just the poster themselves. Ask yourself what was the intention of them? What intention they had while they were posting this? Were they posting for education? Were they posting for social cohesion? Or were they just posting so that people can use it to make fun of somebody or to use it as a base of hate speech for another group? So always, always question intentions. This is for people who are very active on social media and they make a living from social media. So if a post is sponsored, if you're being sponsored to say, you know, this particular product or this particular service really helped me in this way or the next way, just say that, because, you know, a lot of people can come and just take this as the basis for if they're going to get a product or they're going to involve themselves in a service. But sometimes even the person who is posting has not even tried out the product that they're talking about. So if the post is sponsored, be very respectful and tell people, I'm being paid to say this. Always check the facts. Yeah. This is about, we had talked about fact checking. Is the content of this post from this conflict? When was it posted by whom? Is the information accurate? This is what I was talking about before you click. So ask yourself if the information is accurate, who is posting, what is the intention of this person who is posting, and then when did this happen? Because a lot of the conflict you see, you're being told, oh, you know, the soldiers from this place, this is what they're doing to the people of this place. But then it's not even from there. Like maybe this is something you're being told is happening in Africa. Well, maybe sometimes it's something that had happened in the south of Africa 15, 20 years ago. So always, always check your facts before you repost, before you share, before you comment. Always check your facts. Also, if you're posting on behalf of your organization or as yourself. So for me as a social media manager, I have to be very careful because whatever it is I'm posting, my tone, my personal tone, what I would like to say might not be the tone of the organization. So in the organization, we have guidelines, we have we have our particular, we've just how we present issues. So if you're posting on behalf of your organization, let go of your own personal views might not figure into what your organization stands for. So always be very careful if you're posting on your own behalf. Like, for example, what Don Lemon said about the female politician being past her prime might not be what CNN is about. Maybe for them, they uphold a very respectful space towards all women and towards everybody. But then this person speaking on, they were speaking on CNN, so it might be construed as they're speaking on behalf of CNN, and they're saying such things that are like in direct contravention to what CNN stands for. So always check if you're posting on as yourself or on behalf of your organization. Are you encouraging justice and fairness? Are you just writing things so that other people can take it up and continue spreading misinformation or continue spreading hate? Always make sure you're on the side of justice and fairness. So by interacting with online hate speech, you are encouraging it. Do not interact with hate speech. You know, we have said, we've said there's a way to counter hate speech. So if you see someone like being hateful, there's a way you can respectfully challenge. But if somebody is spewing hate speech and you're coming and saying, see, even you group of people, also you people, you do this, and then you perpetuate the hate speech towards them as well. That kind of back and forth does not help anyone. So just make sure you challenge what they say, and you try to give facts on what they're saying and why what they're saying is not accurate. But do not have a back and forth. And you know, when they insult you, maybe your tribe, your gender, whatever it is, they insult you, you do not insult them and their group back. And the final thing is to reverse it. So if it was you who was being told what you were about to post, how would you feel? So always think before you click is the message that we try and put across to our partners, to our audience, to the people who work with us. And see, once you just hit click on a post, sometimes you cannot get it back, because what if somebody has taken a screenshot before you have time to pull it down? You have seen all over, and mostly in the US, where you're trying to get a job or you're trying to get a posting or you got a very big opportunity, and they go back to what you posted 10 years ago. They will go back, because once you have something online, it's very, very hard to take it back. So always just take all those steps. So before you click on something, just question the intention of you or the original person who posted, and make sure that the facts align with what you're posting and that you're posting it in very good faith. So we implore you to hashtag think before you click. This is the game, the Snakes and Ladders. You can download it. I'm sure Kendi has already put the link, so you can download it and play this game. There's usually dice. We have, let me show you. We have this dice that we use to play the game. It's quite interesting. If you have time for this, please go and download it and play. It's very, very informative. So when you come to a place like, for example, your tweet has gone viral, you go forward, but when you repost dangerous text or dangerous speech, you go back down. So anything that takes you forward is positive, you need to be doing that. But anything that takes you backwards is very negative, and that's what you, when we're talking about thinking before you click, that is what you need to be thinking about before you click. So anything negative will take you several steps back. It's sort of a negative consequence, but anything you do that is positive is a positive consequence, and it will take you forward. That was from South Sudan. This one is one from Cameroon. And then we have one in the Ethiopian context. And I believe we've come to the end of today's session. Took a little bit longer than I expected, but we have 7 minutes. So in case anybody has any questions, this would be the time. Any questions? Any notes, anything somebody has to comment on, or just anything you'd like us to know about today's topic? Any thoughts?
Well, today I have to say thank you very much, because you got a granted where one has to adjust himself and find out the truth, how you move all the time. I'm really so happy. Thank you. May God bless you.
Thank you so much. So I see there's an attendance sheet that has been placed. I'm going to give you a few minutes to fill it in, but in case anybody has any question, Ms. Gikunda and myself are right here. You can answer any questions that you have. Yes, Mr. Amos.
Okay, thank you very much. I think of late there's a scenario of Eric Omondi that is currently happening in Kenya. And, you know, I don't know if it's a hate speech, I don't know. But now assuming you are a victim of such scenario, like individually. Now, how do you deal with such scenarios individually, like someone trying to put such a thing to you? How do you handle? Yes, I want you to give me a clue on how to handle it. Thank you.
Well, with Eric Omondi, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say a lot of things, I would want to say 100% of the things he does are scripted. But also, there are those people who they're called clout chasers. They're just chasing attention from people, yeah? And, but in chasing clout, he usually uses the names of people, which is, it's true. He has been naming people and sort of trying to shame them into doing what he thinks that they should be doing. So in such a case, he's high profile. That is a very high profile speaker. So we can use the steps we talked about countering high profile speakers. There can be pressure that is put, but you see, for such people, the more pressure you put on them, the happier they become, because the more attention now they are given. Yeah. So I've seen several people answer him, and it was quite, it was very encouraging to see how some people were answering him. Like this, there's a musician called Daddy Owen. He just came and very respectfully told him, you do not know about what people are going through. Please just, if you're trying to chase clout or do anything of the sort, just know we are people and we go through things, and just don't, use people when you're trying to chase clout. But then he sometimes gets his, what we call karma. He was arrested the other day, so we will see how it goes with that. Kendi usually has very strong opinions about Eric Omondi.
Actually wanted to say, I have ignored him so much. I had no idea what the hell he did this time around, because today it's something, Friday it's going to be another thing, next week. I stopped having strong opinions. I grew up. Thank you.
So I see a question about, I would like Kendi, if you may take this one. So Lobo Elikana is asking, how can social media firms tackle hate speech like in countries? I'm going to assume by social media firms, he means firms like Meta and Twitter.
Well, You see, the thing is, they have been tasked before with the aspect of misinformation, hate speech, disinformation, malinformation that happens on their platforms, but they have been put to task by their governments, in that Meta is a registered company in the US. So whenever they contravene the American laws, there's a time, I think last year, Mark Zuckerberg had a whole, sit down with them, had to explain things to senators. Of course, they didn't understand things, but in that way, they are held accountable. Of course, they're not. There's so many things I think they've been able to sort of circumnavigate, but they are held accountable. Also, if you look at one of the things that I am really curious to see how it's going to go is now that Twitter is owned by, what's his face, this South African guy? Yeah, Elon Musk. How is that going to go? Because there's a lot of he's reinstated a lot of accounts that had been closed before, but then also people do report some various accounts. Like, for example, there's this guy who was called Andrew Tate. He was reinstated, and then his account was blocked. And then there's this back and forth happening in Twitter right now. One, largely because America is a capitalist. It's a capitalist society, and they really. Of course, even most of the world is a capitalist society, but I think American is a bit more extra. They really don't care about so many things. The problem with putting them to task in African countries, which I think is what the question was asking, is we cannot do that. We cannot do that because they're not registered companies in our countries. I remember there's a time we had a very big problem with right now on Facebook, there used to be these, if you remember, there used to be frames where if you have a campaign on something, gender violence, you can, put up a frame, and then people would use that frame to trend. Right now, there's only 3 frames, one for climate change, one for civil society, and another one for COVID-19. Yeah, COVID-19. But then it begs the question: where does it leave everybody else? Like, for example, when I say civil society, I don't mean civic education, because for Facebook civic education, it's sort of like elections. When I say civil societies, like now, say, for example, what we're doing here. You want to have a frame for, hate speech mitigation, you can't. And in an African country, you can't say, because who are you asking? And then there's also have been a lot of, they have a lot of issues. Like, Njoki, if you remember in Kenya, they had this scenario where they had not the Facebook parent company, but they hired people through third-party company, and that third-party company was treating the employees badly, but people would complain to Facebook, but there was nothing that was done. Why? Because these people are not directly employed by Facebook, then they are employed by a third party who is then in reports to Facebook. Of course, they closed their organization and all that, but for African countries, unfortunately, which is quite sad, we can't hold them accountable, which is why I'm a very big proponent of maybe just maybe we should create our own platforms, join our own platforms. I know that's a pipe dream, but we can dream, we can start something, I think, but yeah, we can't hold them accountable, unfortunately.
To add on to that, I think the question was, how can social media firms tackle? They can if they were not capitalistic. They have to renounce capitalism. Because let me tell you one thing they found out using their algorithms is that anything that is inflammatory, any speech that is inflammatory towards another group, that is what sells. And for them, their first answer is to the shareholders. How much money do they get the shareholders? And so if that is what brings in advertising revenue, then that is what they're going to push forward. So when you're on your timeline, they push forward what they think you will make you angry. Because when you see something and you're just scrolling through your feed, for example, and you see something, I mean, it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's just an okay thing, you just pass it. You see something that makes you happy, I don't know, you might like, but when you see something that actually makes you angry, oh, that one you will click on, you will follow whatever link that is there, you will watch the video, you will read the comments, you will spend a whole 20 minutes on that one post versus the 20 minutes you'll spend on 100 other posts. So for them, it's very advantageous for the status quo to be maintained. However, there, as usual, we say there are, when you put pressure on people, there's always some sort of result. So the civil society has been trying to come together with also help from some governments to come together and try to see how they can try to hold these social media firms accountable, how they can get them to be accountable. Several years ago, because of how bad the racial abuse had gotten online for Black football players in Europe, there was a whole entire blackout for social media for football teams, and then a lot of other sports joined, Formula One, basketball, netball, a whole host of other football sports joined. Sorry, a lot of other sports, other types of sports, they joined the footballers, the Premier League, in just giving social media a complete blackout for, it was, I think, for an entire weekend. So there's always those kind of things that people try and push to make them do that. Another problem is you can never get the same. Like, for example, when we talk about terms, yeah, when you're saying you'll remove people who say this, I don't know if you've seen of social media. So now to circumvent, you use numbers and letters. So when you say men, you don't write men, write M, number 3, N. You see now, if it's an algorithm, it will not catch that. And they cannot catch something in my language from my tribe. So it's usually it's a very delicate balance. What can they do? They can employ a lot more resources towards fighting hate speech. But do they have the goodwill to do so? That is another question.
Yeah, actually, now that you say that, there's a case in a Kenyan court right now. There's, I think, 4 Ethiopians who've sued Facebook because of the attacks that have been happening in Ethiopia for a while, and they've been exacerbated by, the platform Facebook. There's a lot, and even the sad thing is, even when you report these things to them, they're not going to take them down, because also one of the things I think they can do, and they chose not to, is employ Africans. When I say Africans, not Africans in their countries. They don't, like how they employ you and then take you to Ireland or to the US. No. Employ Africans in their countries. And when I say Africans, it's every single country. Why? Because we are 55 countries in this continent. We are very, very diverse. We're very different. Whatever I do in Kenya is not what you do in South Sudan, is not what you do in Ethiopia, Cameroon, I don't know, Djibouti. It's diverse. So, yeah.
It's a bleak answer, but one we will have to take.
I'm actually sorry for interrupting you again, Joki. I don't know what I think it's Lobur, the one who asked about the question for Eric Omondi. I don't know if it's the thing he did the other day where he was it's called what, he was picketing for high food costs and all that. Well,
with a gentleman with their shirts off, yeah.
I have no opinions.
But anyway, we need to move on faster. So Wilson Kenyi said we have talked about peace building through art, but we didn't talk about peace building through technology. You might have to take me up on that. I think the next session, just give me like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I talk about it, because now, or actually, you can go and download the field guide. Kendi, you were saying?
Yeah, actually, if you think about it, what we are doing now here, this is peace building through technology. Anything you do online is peace building through technology. For example, when she talked about emojis. Emojis are technology. The whatever game that we've translated from a book to a hard copy, and then we've been able to put it online. That's peace building through technology. Checking yourself what you post online, that's technology. Technology doesn't have to be hardcore technology, like the way when someone says technology, there's a very big assumption that you're talking about coding, artificial intelligence, machine learning. No. Even here on this call, we are all tech, whatever, that one.
Thank you very much.
But I will expound on it more. This is directly at Kendi as the architect of the field guide who has given us the whole entire guide. Moses is asking how he can differentiate between hate speech and threats.
Well, you know what's hate speech. You gave definitions of what's hate speech. Threat is, I know there are many ways to define it, but it's targeted towards it. It causes harm, direct harm. Hate speech does cause harm, yes, but the intention of hate speech some of the time is some people do not intend to harm you, but it ends up harming you. A threat, I'm going to sit here and tell Njoki, I'll come kill you. Okay, that sounds like a joke, but if you actually, for a threat also, you have to be very, very keen on what's the medium that the person is using, who is telling you, what's the tone, because like the way I've told Njoki, I'll come kill you, that's a joke. But then we would be in a problem. Like, for example, if she owes me a lot of money, say, I don't know, millions of dollars, and I have no money, and then I send a hitman, I'll tell her, Njoki, you owe me XYZ $1 million and you've not paid me for a while, I've waited, I will take action. That's a threat. It's a veiled threat. It doesn't have to be direct, but I think threats have to be very, very direct. And also one of the things is also most people, when they're threatening you, they don't hide behind anything. They don't pretend. But for hate speech, I could say, for example, I know Njoki gave a lot of examples, but I could say Kikuyus love money too much. They don't even care about people. They care about money more than they care about people. You know, that's hate speech. Why? Because it's a stereotype that I've turned into many, I don't know, I've changed the meaning of it. And if, sorry, Njoki, I know you Kikuyu, a Kikuyu person hears it, they're going to be like, they might not tell you that it's hurtful, but they'll just be like, oh, I don't know why she said those words. So, yeah.
Yeah, I will add that a threat has an actual description of an action. So a threat can be something like, if you people continue to behave like this, then this can happen to you. Then they describe something that can happen to you. Or it can be directly as, I will come and I will do this, I will do this. So it usually has a description of an action. Labur is asking about the link to downloading.
I did share. I shared it. Kitambo, let me share it again, but I can also.
Dengbol, you've had your hand up for a while. Do you have a question or?
Yes, I have a question, and it's directed to you and Ms. Kendi. It's about, now that we are talking about misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, fake news, and all this, the essence of this training. When are we most likely to see concrete legislations across Africa? There's no denying it that social media has changed the world. but I would trade in all that I know from social media to get my credibility back based on all the attacks and all the false information that has been labeled against me sometime on social media just because being a public figure for that matter. And right now, for instance, if I was applying for a job, what people do first is search and to see the kind of person that they're dealing with. And if I just say that Joki Karaoke stole this amount of money and all this and that, although it was meant just as a way of frustrating you, defaming you, or whatever it is, then it remains there. So when are we most likely to see serious legislations in Africa that can combat this? And we are all fighting for freedom of speech, which is very, very important. But at the same time, when people do not have responsibility over that speech, it becomes a problem now. Thank you.
Indeed.
Wow, that's a very loaded question because then we have 55 countries in this continent. When you ask when are we likely to see tangible change in terms of legislation in the policy towards hate speech, misinformation, and basically our interactions online, I don't know. That's a very valid answer. I don't know why, because even in Kenya, I'm Kenyan, these so policy changes over time as the years go. And if you think about, like, for example, the online space, digital space technically has liberated us so much. We feel like there's no, how do I say, like if, for example, today I start posting on social media actively or on YouTube actively, most of the time there's a very gray line between what's very private to me and what's public. That also means I'm exercising my freedom of expression, which we happen to enjoy here in Kenya. But then when you ask how, like, when are we likely? Maybe never. Why? Because we as people, like when I say people, I mean common, in Kenya we say common wananchi, so that would be just common wananchi, common human beings, like citizenry. When we need to talk, like there's a thing about change that comes from society, change that comes from movements. Like, for example, if you think, I know I'm going to use a very bad example because America is quite liberated, but if you think about the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, a lot of things were changed because of the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the things that we need to also know as, say, Africans in our different countries, change comes with pain. So, like, for example, if you want to see a legislation of people, I don't know, if you demeaned online, you can be able to be taken to court and, you know, those things are passed. You need to work on it. You need to work for it. But then also there's need for our politicians to actually not be greedy, to actually really care about what we employ them to do. I use the word employ because we vote for them and then they go to parliament or wherever they go. That's a job we have given them. They need to stop thinking about themselves as big man, like I'm the person who's, when you meet them, you're like, oh boss. No. He or she is your employee. They are paid through your taxes. You can lobby for them to probably pass legislation that favors you in some way, but to be quite honest, I have no concrete answer. But in terms of, like, for example, that example you gave where someone talked terrible things about you online, and then you go to an interview and then that comes up. Most employers, and I mean a good employer, is not going to follow that because they will know the truth. They will know things that are lies. Like, for example, if I said bad things about Njoki today and I rubbished her on social media, or I decided to, I don't know, you know how you can edit images and then put a photo of someone in a nude image and post and say, this is Njoki. A good employer will not give Njoki a job because of that. That's harassment towards her, and she can be able to justify its harassment. So I don't necessarily think that people, doing, I don't know, brandishing you names or calling you names online is something that should give employers, you as an employer, hard time. But you should also be careful what you as a person post online. As much as we shouldn't judge from a long time ago, again, capitalist society, you're looking for a job, you need to look good. I don't know, the things you say 10 years ago, they always come up somehow. It's the pain of living in 2023.
I will have to add, when I was discussing the issue of countering high-profile speakers, there's something we talked about. So I cannot talk about the whole of Africa because every country has to come up with their legislation per country, according to your constitution, according to your whatever your house, because for us, it is the parliament and the Senate. Those things have to pass through both houses. So it's very individualistic in terms of countries. So taking the example of Kenya actually has a hate speech law. South Africa has a hate speech law. Ethiopia has a hate speech law. The problem with that is that then the government uses those same laws to oppress free speech. They oppress journalists, they oppress opposition, they oppress anyone who talks anything about the government. We had I know it was in 2018, our own president took a blogger to court over something the blogger had said. I said, this is hate speech. They cannot talk about the president, this way. And in Kenya, even a text message, when you send someone a text message, they can go to court and say, you're defaming me, you insulted me, and you told me. Somebody who took someone to court because they said your private parts smell on text message, took them to court and won because that is defamation. So laws are like a two-edged, they're double-edged sword. They can help you, but also the government can use it to oppress. So as to if you're going to actually see a comprehensive set of legislations across Africa, is something you're going to have to wait and see, unfortunately. But I really do feel compassion for your situation. People who say such things should be able to back them up. You should be able to take them to court for defamation, even if it's not just about hate speech laws. I'm sure there are laws against defamation, but we keep throwing this thing about litigation out a lot, but not everyone, especially in Africa, can afford to go to court and sue someone for saying something. So there are a lot of things that are flying online. So it's a multi, we just push at it from different angles. Push at it from the point of the social media companies, for governments, civil society, NGOs like us who are trying to talk about hate speech and online violence, high-profile people, individuals who actually have a stake in it. So we just all fight it from whatever angle we are at. But on legislation and when we are likely to see it, I think that remains to be seen as to how governments are invested. For a government to actually come up with a policy, it depends on how it's going to help them, how they feel they are going to benefit from it. So, yeah. Anyway, so, I think we are like 22 minutes past our time. Sorry about that. So I want to thank you very much for today's session. It was quite interactive. I hope the next session, I will get to talk to the people I did not get to talk to today. But Otherwise, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for staying and listening. And we meet, I think it is next week on Thursday for the next session. Okay. Thank you guys and have a good evening.